It's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. And I've been waiting a while to do an interview with today's guest. She's a Connecticut attorney. Her name is Renee Bauer. She and I share the same name, but that's my middle name. And we are going to be talking about why not to hire a pit bull attorney. And she's sending me messages. I'm thinking, why is she sending me messages when she's not here yet? Here she is. Okay, good, good, good. All right. Anyhow, so we met like, I don't know, and we've just had to reschedule a little bit, but I think it's such an important topic because those of us who have come out of these abusive
We did
relationships,
it.
yes. So those of us who come out of these abusive relationships often think, I got to get someone who's really powerful, who's going to take my ex down. And for cases like ours, and Renee, I think you know that Chris and I only deal with domestic violence cases, the most extreme divorces and custody battles, that we don't think it's the best idea to hire a pit bull attorney. And I think you agree. But before you even introduce yourself, what are some qualities that you would consider to describe a pit bull attorney?
Okay. So the pit bull attorney is the lawyer who, when you're sitting there for the consultation, tells you exactly what you want to hear and tells you that they are going to be able to get you everything that you want. It makes promises. Like, that is a massive red flag. If a lawyer is promising you anything, you pick up and walk out the door and go schedule a consultation with someone different, because there's absolutely no guarantees in court. Lawyers cannot guarantee an outcome. Every lawyer has had a war story of winning the case they thought that they were going to lose and losing the case they thought they were going to win. It just happens that way. So when when a lawyer is promising you something, that means they want to land you as a client and they're going to tell you what you want to hear. So that's like the first big red flag.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it makes me think about the parallels in the relationship with your ex, the
Yeah.
future faking, like, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to do
Yeah.
everything. It sounds wonderful, and then they suck you right in.
Yeah, yeah, and like if it's too good to be true, it is. And it's just like, what a lawyer should be doing is when you sit down with them and they start to tell you potential outcomes and set expectations, they should be giving you the whole range of things that could happen. And I just had someone in my office last week, and she had a situation, and I'm like, listen, here's the deal. Like, the best case scenario is going to be one that you don't like. And if you get that,
Mm.
that is a win. But the other stuff that you think will happen because the judge is going to just hear your story and automatically connect with you, and it just doesn't work that way. And in her situation, she had gone through multiple attorneys, unfortunately, and some of them promised things, and then she was so unhappy because, of course, she didn't get what they promised. And then it's really, really hard to kind of wind that back and then go to hear from somebody who says, listen, like, your best case scenario is probably the one that you're still not going to be happy with, but that's probably the sound advice. And then look at you going to court and you get something more than that, great. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. But when we set ourselves up for what we think is a win, and we think that we're going to get our ex and we're going to punish them, and the judge is just going to see all of the horrible ways that you've been wronged, courts just don't function that way.
Yeah, I know. I mean, pop culture is so misleading, isn't it? Because the
Yeah.
movies, you would think this is how it is, like A Few Good Men.
Oh my God. And the what's the new Kim Kardashian show that's out there, All's Fair,
Oh, okay, I
is
haven't seen it.
all about, you have to look it up. So Kim Kardashian's in it. The cast is actually great. She's in it, and the other people are slipping my mind, but it's about a female divorce law firm who their job is to take their clients and get them the win and make their future exes pay. And and there's only a couple episodes I think that have been released, but it's like the vengeance that they exact on their exes. And as I was listening to the concept, I'm like, oh my God, we are rolling back what family courts are meant to do, and what so many family lawyers are trying to do to really help families. And that just setting up that idea that you're going to get that I gotcha moment is really just doing a disservice to helping people untangle their messy marriages, and helping them, which I know you do so much work on, is what does their future look like? And, creating that path where they have control over it. And let me tell you, it's not about going back to court and spending all your time in court and fighting in court. Like, that is not the thing that's going to give you that freedom that you're craving from being released from that marriage.
Yeah, yeah, and thanks for clarifying that. We call it, I know you're Connecticut and I'm Connecticut, but New Yorker. We always call it the harsh New York reality check is like it's not going to be like in the movies or in these shows, and it's
Yeah.
just awful that this kind of stuff is inflaming people and making them think that's my goal is punishment
Yeah.
without realizing the impact that it has on your children and your entire family. But before we keep talking about this, Renee, why don't you officially introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi. We jumped right into it. So my name's Renee Bauer. I am the founder of a law firm in Connecticut called Happy Even After Family Law. We practice all over Connecticut. And I'm also divorced myself, twice divorced, and that my personal story is the thing that brought me so much shame for so long. And because of that, now I've made it my mission to talk about divorce, to help lift the shame that other people might feel when you're going through that, to help them reset and recognize that it's just one part of your story. It's not the entire story that you have. And so, because of that work, I'm also a motivational speaker and author.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned the part about the shame because for our audience in particular who are dealing with domestic violence, most of our clients are very well educated, highly successful
Yeah.
individuals, super creative, responsible, amazing, and there's an added level of shame because they are the ones who are looked at, both men and women, as role models, people in the community that others are sometimes envious of. And when they hear if our clients choose to share details about what's happened, they're often met with things like, I never thought you, of all people,
Yeah.
would fall for something like this. And they don't understand that domestic violence affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men on average at some point. And so there is all this shame, but once you start talking about it, you'll see that a lot of people have been keeping this to themselves too. And it's very validating to talk about it.
It's interesting when you talk about that, the executives, the entrepreneurs, the people with so-called success, right, in quotes. Like, we might look outwardly, we might look and say that's someone who's successful, who finds himself in that situation. I think there's this added level because we are high performers,
Mhm.
and we don't give up, we have grit, we power through stuff. And how can we find ourselves in this situation where we're powerless? And why did we not see it? And I think that there's that added complexity of saying, how did I end up here? What did I do? What did I miss? The fact that I didn't see that. And that's so much part of my story too, is because I was running a successful law firm, and I found myself in a second marriage that was really not good. And it really, it sort of took me out of the knees, because I'm like, how can I be this successful businesswoman, and yet in this relationship I am the complete opposite of that? And as I start to talk to other women who have gone through that, it's fascinating to hear that there's so many stories like that. And I think because we feel like, it's that perfectionism, like we feel like we always have to be perfect, we always have to succeed, that's how we have to present ourselves. And then you start to have those real raw conversations and say there's so many more people like that out there, and they're just not putting words to it because they're embarrassed, and
Yeah.
because they don't want to admit that they found themselves in this situation that sort of ran away from itself, or they stayed too long. Because how often do we say, well, why doesn't she just leave?
Oh,
Right? Like, it's so easy. There's so many things, and it actually doesn't have anything to do with money. Like, sometimes we'll hear, well, I can't leave because of money. Well, what happens if money isn't? Why are you staying if money isn't? Well, there's so many layers to that.
Yeah. And the quality that you mentioned, one of the qualities that grit, that is actually, I know my partner often talks about that because people who do get in these situations are successful and have grit and tenacity and resilience. And that works against us because when we're in an unhealthy relationship, we're like, I am going to do what I can to fix it. Like I'm going to somehow change things. And you feel like you've got this power that you don't. And again, it harms us by
Yeah.
trying to use our talents on something that's just not going to work out.
Yeah, like the tagline is I'm no quitter, right? Like I am not quitting
Right.
this. Like I am going to force this thing into success because it worked that way for my business. It worked that way to in my career. Why would it not work that way in my relationship? And it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So back to the thing with the pit bull attorney,
Yes.
you mentioned about people making promises that they can't deliver on. Are there other qualities that you see or that you think people are looking for when they're like, I need a pit bull?
Yeah, so yes, so the lawyers that have the reputation of being the fighters, um what will happen is there'll be this trend of them taking the case, they're going to charge you a lot of money. They're going to go through that money, and if you end up getting to the end of your retainer and there isn't more of that money to be put into the retainer, then they're going to pull back from the case or no longer want to litigate it to how they started because the money isn't there. So, or you're going to replenish that, and now you're even that much deeper into litigation without necessarily getting any results. So, that type of lawyer, you're going to see them file a lot of motions in court, and they
Mhm.
don't often go anywhere. They're motions that are pending out there, but nothing's actually happening. There's a lot of posturing, a lot of like, bully emails coming, going, exchanging back and forth. And what's happening though is while it looks like this attorney is really advocating for you and fighting really hard for you, um, it's preventing progress from moving forward and getting you out of this situation because the more your attorney is aggressive, and listen, sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need that attorney who's really going to go to bat and advocate for you, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you end up in a situation that the best thing that can happen is getting out of this and get through it on the other side. And I say cut your losses, but to the extent of like focusing on what matters, which is building your life on the other side of it and not getting hung up on the small stuff that isn't going to impact anything in the long run anyway. So um it's just be wary of that lawyer who says I'm going to do these 10 things to get you what you want, which is all wrapped up in setting those expectations. So it's you have to vet your lawyer before you hire them, and I think that that's really important, is to ask the right questions and get a real feel for how they operate. And you can straight up ask them that. What's your approach? What's your approach to handling cases? What's your approach to going to trial? Trial is absolutely necessary for some cases. Hands down, you have to do that. However, not every case requires that level either.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about a concept that Bill Eddy has talked about. If
Yeah.
you know who he is, he's like a
Oh, yeah.
social worker turned
Yeah.
lawyer turned conflict resolution expert. He's the founder of the High Conflict Institute. And he talks about positive advocates and negative advocates. And he talks
Yes.
about how negative advocates can often be people that love you, your friends and family, as well as your attorney. And a negative advocate is someone who fans the flames of conflict.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so positive advocates are the opposite, where even if it's your own lawyer, people, they love you, they tend to take a more neutral attitude and they look at what's best for your family, even if it's not exactly what you want, but it's like more
Yes.
measured and doesn't just think about that short-term victory and vengeance, but more what is the impact of all of this going to be on your kids. And so I'm guessing you want to find a lawyer who's more of a positive advocate, not a pit bull attorney, not who's going to have the pissing contest emails back and
Yes.
forth that you are paying for.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I can think back when I used a limited scope attorney for part of my stuff and the back and forth that I said, please, like, don't argue about somebody like leaving a stupid name on your answering machine. Like, I mean, oh
Yes.
my God, it was hundreds of dollars for
Yeah.
everything that was written. It was ridiculous.
And I think that this goes back to goal setting. And taking the time when you hire a lawyer to sit with your lawyer, if they don't prompt this, maybe you prompt it to say, here are my goals. Like, and I always ask clients, what are your goals? And then when they start to go off on a tangent about wanting other stuff or going for vengeance, and then you can go back to, well, how does that align with your goals? If your goals are to have a healthy co-parenting relationship, and if your goals are to move forward and have enough financial security, and you're doing something contrary to that, and you're talking about the name calling, right, that might have happened when someone was angry, how does that align with your goals? And it's always going back to that as the guiding light as to what happens in your case, and recognizing that you're not going to get all 10 of your goals, but really identifying what are your top couple goals that you have, and then having your case strategy and directing your lawyer strategy that way. And oftentimes it's really easy to get caught in the weeds of all the things, and want all the things and get held up on the past. Like every time clients go and start talking about what happened 10 years ago,
Mhm.
straight up, it doesn't matter to what's happening right now. And the judge isn't going to want to hear what happened 10 years ago. They're going to want to know what's happening now. What do the finances look like? What is the parenting plan? Like, they're going to want to know, how do they help untangle that family, and so that they can move forward as two separate families.
Yeah. So as you're describing the goal setting, I'm thinking about how the clients that we work with are coming out of these unhealthy relationships where the power dynamic's been like this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people who have been victims of coercive control have had their decision-making capabilities taken away
Yeah.
over time. And sometimes it's hard for them to even know what to order on a menu because they've forgotten who they are. They don't know what they deserve because they've been made to believe they deserve nothing, and they're going to be homeless and penniless, and the children are going to be taken away, and they're going to be bloodied and begging for mercy in the street, which is something that one of our clients' exes told her would happen to her. So
Yeah.
let's say you have a client who's in this place where they're like, I don't even know what I want. Where do you begin?
Yeah. I love coaches. I love, because I think anyone has to recognize that your lawyer is lawyering, and they're doing all of the steps and finances in court, and they have many cases, and they're not necessarily spending the time. Some do, but not all of them are going to spend the time to really untangle all of what you just talked about and work with someone at that level.
Mhm.
Coaches can do that. I think that it's amazing to have someone who can really help define what that is and what that looks like and what their future looks like, and not get hung up on the past or the legal stuff around it. I always say having a therapist is also someone on your team that you might want to consider. And it comes down to building a team. You
Mhm.
can't just hire a lawyer and expect that to be the person who's going to wear all the hats to help you really figure out what it is you want. Sometimes lawyers do a really good job of looking at things holistically. Not all the time, a lot of lawyers don't, so you can't rely on that. So it's really building a team to help you rebuild that confidence, and then start doing things for yourself. Like, I like telling people, take yourself out to dinner. And most women will look at me if I say, take yourself out to a nice dinner, get dressed up, order the good wine or the good champagne, and sit there. And they're like, I've never done that. I don't know how to do that. Well, try it. Like, just something so simple, because it's so powerful to sit there and say, I don't need somebody to order off the menu for me. I'm going to make this decision on my own, and I'm going to be okay. And maybe I don't know about the wine, but I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to order that thing. And it's just start doing those tiny little steps to start to build your confidence back.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be so hard to do that. It's really,
Mhm.
really scary. So
Yeah.
Renee, you talked about some questions to ask a lawyer. Like we
Yeah.
have a whole chapter in our first book about choosing the right lawyer, and we have a list of ideas that we use. But I want to hear from you as a lawyer. What kind of questions do you like to be asked? Because really, we know that the relationship goes two ways. Like during
Yes.
a consult, our client is asking you questions, but we always say that lawyer should also be asking questions. So
Yeah.
what kinds of conversations do you like to have with prospective clients?
I like to have conversations about communication style. What does someone's communication style look like? It's extremely important to me that I have a client who is responsive. As
Mm.
I would think that they want me to be responsive. That doesn't mean I'm going to respond within 10 minutes of every email or call, but someone who will at least, for me, it's 24 hours. Like if a
Mhm.
client is reaching out, there should be a return communication within 24 hours, acknowledging it, saying, hey, things have been busy. Let's get something on the calendar, or actually responding to whatever it is, or picking up the phone. Um, that's so important because I want a client who is on the same page. There's nothing so frustrating to me as a lawyer is trying to do things on the file and then hear silence on the other side, and it stops the progress. And
Oh
so
my
it's the
God.
same thing for clients too. Like, this
Yeah,
is why
yeah, we
lawyers
hear
get
that
grieved.
as like the number one issue with their attorneys. They're like, they're
Yeah,
not answering me. It's been weeks.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
good to
mean,
hear
and
that.
and that's like that's why lawyers get grieved. That's like the number one complaint is lawyers not being responsive. And
Mhm.
you're hiring this person to work for you, and so you should be having that communication. The other thing is I always tell clients, you may not like what I have to say, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to say it. Like, we're going to have open and honest conversations about all the things, and then at the end of the day, that client gets to decide which path they want to go to trial, not go to trial, but they're going to make that decision having all of the education. So I really want a client who's going to be open to all of the information, take it in, process it. We can talk through it, and not someone who's going to immediately get defensive because I'm saying something that they don't want to hear.
Mhm.
I would be doing a massive disservice to a client if I was telling them yes to everything and doing all of the things that they're asking me to do. It would be very expensive for them. They would get frustrated at the end. So I really want someone open minded. Like, this relationship between the client and the lawyer, it's a relationship. And it has to be with someone who it feels like there's give and take.
Mhm.
I've had clients come to me who've had previous lawyers and they felt like they were getting bullied. I've had
Mhm.
clients report that lawyers actually yell at them,
Yep.
you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
Right? Like, your lawyer should not be yelling at you. Your lawyer should be listening. Doesn't They don't have to agree with you, but they shouldn't be yelling. And it shouldn't feel like you're going. I mean, and this has happened, quite frankly, a lot with women. Of like, woman comes to me and says, my lawyer made me. It felt like I was dealing with my soon-to-be ex,
Yeah.
my own lawyer. So, it's so important to have consultations and sit and have a conversation just to make sure that that lawyer's values and philosophy on cases really aligns with yours.
Yeah. And as you're, let me write that down. Like, I'm a big note taker as we talk. Somebody's like, ooh, 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 good point. Um, we often think about how sometimes people take the same unhealthy relationship patterns into their relationship with a
Yeah.
new lawyer, and how it's really an opportunity when you're hiring a lawyer and you're getting out of this relationship to change that relationship dynamic. So we think about how when you were in that previous relationship, however it happened, you gave up your power. The power was taken
Yeah.
away from you. But then when you're going to look for a lawyer, sometimes people think, I have to find someone who's going to save my life. I'm going to pay them this big retainer, and then I don't have to pay attention, and they're going to take care of everything for me.
Yeah.
And it drives us crazy. We're like, you need to take something called strategic oversight of your case and realize, like,
Yeah.
this person is not going to save your life, just like your ex
Yeah.
shouldn't have been in control of everything. So it's such an opportunity with this first new intimate relationship, because I know for me it
Yeah.
was an intimate
It
relationship
is.
with my attorney, to change things around. And what do you think of that?
I think
Like,
you're
more
spot on.
collaborative. Yeah.
I agree 1,000% with that. And one of the things we'll see just to illustrate what you're talking about is the client who is asked to gather financial information, which is in every case, and they go and they drop a big box off and say, "Here you go." And it's coffee stained and it's missing pages and they're upside down. It's like, have you looked at this? Because I guarantee you haven't. And if you're not organizing your stuff, then you're not really informing yourself as to what there is. And you're going to know as a client more than anyone else what's happening inside some of those statements.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be able to see something. Like, it's so important to look at it. Like, as a lawyer, I look through everything and I can ask questions and be like, what happened? Like, what was this charge on this particular day? But it's your life. So you might have something that jumps out to you that wouldn't jump out to me, that needs to be addressed and looked at. And so taking ownership and over all of that, and the organization is so important, because you can't expect that. Hopefully your lawyer's looking at all your stuff. You can't expect that your lawyer is going to know your life like you do, and you could offer things, some insight that they might have missed.
Right. And also it's so expensive. So we
Yes,
talk about
yes,
dropping off that's one big
yes,
reason I help people with is something called targeted documentation. It's like creating
yes,
summaries and organizing things related around factors, especially when it comes to custody that actually matter, rather than here's all my stuff, lawyer, and now you make sense of it and build the case.
yep,
Like your job, Renee, is to translate the case into the law. So if you have things that are really well organized that relate to, again, factors that matter, we're saving your clients so much money, and they
yes.
love you more because you can do a better job.
Yeah, and I tell clients, I'm like, okay, you have two choices in that situation. You can pay my paralegal to get you organized, or you can take this back and then organize it for us, and then it makes our job much easier. And some clients don't want to be bothered with it, and they say, here you go. But just know that there's a cost tied to that. And for some
Yeah.
people, that's okay. But even in those circumstances, those clients tend to be the harder one to really have those informed, educated conversations about. And they often just say, well, what do you think? What should I do? I don't want to answer that question. I can give you the scope of different options, but I don't want you, like when they say personal, if it was your life, what would you do? That's the question I don't want to answer. I'll answer as your
Mm,
lawyer and as your advocate, but I don't want to say what I would do for myself personally, because you're not me. And
yeah.
we might have different goals and different values and different outlooks and futures and all of that. So it's just so important to take ownership of your role in this process.
Yeah. I mean, our goal with our clients is to make them what we call the teacher's pet of clients for
Yes.
attorneys, because I've noticed with my own attorney during the divorce all those years ago, like being a great client, lawyers will do things for us and sometimes they don't charge us.
Yeah.
They'll do lots of little favors.
Yeah, I mean, 100%, because it's the organization. It's that's the I love when clients. I mean, we're all paperless, but I'm still a paper girl too, and I
Mhm.
love when clients come in with binders that are all tabbed and like labeled. Like
Mhm.
that makes me excited, because it makes it really easy for me to put my case together, and because I'm going to build that's how I'm going to create. If I'm going to trial, that's how I'm creating my trial notebook. And if someone's giving it to me, that means I have all of the stuff at my fingertips that I need in order to create questions for testimony or cross examination, because they've kept it all. And I don't really organize. I don't have to go hunting for it. And I don't have to message them at all hours as leading up to a hearing to be like, hey, you talked about this situation? Do you have proof of it? Do you have a text? Do you have an email? Because everything is well documented right there. Makes my job so much easier and allows me to advocate in a much better way for that client. So I love the teacher's pet.
All right, good, good, good. So we talked about like preparing for trial and litigation, which we know is like super expensive. And most of
Yeah.
that, I imagine, comes from prepping
Yeah.
for trial, which can get really frustrating for clients because they're like, we didn't even go to trial, but I had to spend like
Yes.
$48,000 just for my lawyer to get the stuff ready. What do you think about trying to work things out outside of court? Because I know some lawyers are litigators, but for us, we prefer to keep as much power as we can in our clients' own hands. And we always urge them, even domestic violence cases, as long as there's
Yeah.
a certain amount of safety, is to work with them to be like, let's figure out what we can do out of that playing field. What's your
I
view on that?
again, you're saying all the right words, that makes my heart sing. Any agreement that you can craft, that you have control over, is going to be much better than what a judge puts in a court order, because I promise you that court order is going to miss things, and then you're going to read it and be like, well, what about X, Y, and Z? And what about this holiday? And it just wasn't even mentioned. And there's going to be all these gaps, because the judge is never going to write a perfect court order. And at least you're retaining some of that control and that power. So I always think that an agreement is going to be the better way. Well, I say always. There's always a small percentage where you just can't reach that agreement. But if you have two people who are willing to come to the table and may not agree, but they're willing to compromise. Both of them are willing to have some give and take, and you both have your sights on what's best in terms of like what's best for the kids. We want to preserve our co-parenting relationship. Then reaching an agreement is always going to be the better way. Because when you go to court, when you go to trial, you can't guarantee anything, but I can almost guarantee that the two of you, as much as you dislike each other now, you're going to dislike each other even that much more. And co-parenting is going to be that much harder, because trial is meant to throw all of the bad stuff against the wall and see what the judge takes. And you're going to say horrible things about each other. And you can't forget that. And that is, it creates, irreparable damage and harm to co-parenting on the other side of that. So in agreement, you might still not like each other. You might still have some issues. There might be a lot of it co-parenting issues and things that you don't necessarily agree with, but you're getting out of first the expense and then just letting some stranger decide the outcome.
Yeah, and as you're talking about an agreement, I think people also have this pop culture idea in their head that a mediation session for 2 hours should take care of everything.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, I'm never going back. But for us, we see mediation as a very strategic process, which involves very tactical communication and behavior and empathy. And it's not quick. Like, what do you think about mediation in terms of how it
Yeah.
should work best?
I've done a mediation from start to finish that took a half hour. I've only done one of them like that. And
Wow.
ones that took 10 sessions,
Mhm.
sometimes more, because it's exactly like what you're talking about, where it isn't meant to be quick and dirty. It's meant to really, and it depends on the level of complexity too, and the number of issues and that come to the table. But it's just because you have conflict, and just because you have a spouse who is really high conflict or maybe has some other challenges, doesn't mean mediation can't work.
Mhm.
It can take longer because maybe there needs to be more time in between because there's homework happening. Maybe you're both having to go out and gather information and bring it back to the table. But what it's doing is you're controlling the length of time, you're controlling how fast it happens, you're controlling the time to really review the document and have the time to have review counsel look at it. So a good mediation should take some sessions. And sometimes that means it's taking more than a handful of sessions in order to get you over the finish line.
Yeah, and not everything has to be taken care of mediation. Like I know in my own case, we got a parenting plan done, and that took
Yes.
quite a while. We couldn't
Yeah.
get the financial stuff done because my ex would show up with a blank legal pad and refuse to share his discovery for
Right.
mediation. But my lawyer was thrilled at the time because he said, you just saved thousands of dollars
Yes.
with getting
Yes.
the parenting plan done. And also because I was able to write it myself and I had an excellent attorney, we were able to put enforcement language in,
Yeah.
deadlines, consequences. So now my partner Chris helps write what we call airtight parenting plans, drafts for people to really think about all of those things that you would never get from like a typical template. There's rituals that your family
Yeah.
might have. That's not going
Right.
to appear if you go to court. So when
Right.
you can carefully consider all the things that matter to you, and even with a high conflict, they care about things too. They want
Right.
things clearly.
Yeah.
So to be able to take the time to really, really think about the nuances, different cultures have things that matter that, again, no judge would care about.
Yeah.
Hairstyling for certain cultures, cutting hair, tattoos, altering appearances, technology. Like these are things that people really go crazy over that a court's going to say, work it out yourself, right?
Yeah. And I would so much rather have a couple go to trial and have their parenting plan signed and filed and done and just go in over money, because money becomes a lot easier to handle.
Mhm.
And you're, at least the couple knows that, okay, this part of it is done. We're going to co-parent in the way that's in there. We're going to deal with all of the issues that have come up, and you spent a lot of time putting that document together, and you're not leaving it to a judge because the judge will never give you the full extent. So that's a great point, is that you can mediate You can even mediate half of your financials. Like you
Mhm.
can go in with an agreement on 3/4 of the things, and maybe you're stuck on one or two pieces and just have a hearing on that. And now you're talking about what might be a couple hours, half day, maybe a full day, probably not, versus what could be a multiple days. And you're right, to prepare for trial, just for people who are listening can wrap their head around. I tell people, like, yes, maybe trial is 8 hours. You're going to, any lawyer is going to spend double the amount of time for days that you have on prep. So if you're scheduled for 2 or 3, think about you're paying for, an additional 2 or 3 days times two, maybe for prep, depending on the
At least
complexity.
in our
At
case,
least, at
way
least.
more.
Right, right. So at least, I mean, and the more money, the more complexity, the more prep time happens. Never mind, we didn't even talk about experts and having things valued and all of that. It just keeps adding up.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, mediation, I mean, there's so many ways to do it. That's a whole other conversation, but
Right.
I feel like you are like, I love that you said you are never going to do as well with the judge's orders as you would with coming together with some kind of agreement. And it is not easy, but
Yes.
we firmly believe that there's possibilities. Plus, I think judges are happier if when you go to court, you
Yeah.
can say, we've already done this, because they always
Yeah.
want to send you out anyway to mediation.
Yeah.
Say, we've tried, we've gotten this far, we just have this limited number of issues, Your Honor. We don't want to waste your valuable time, but
Yeah.
just help us with this thing, rather than like, oh, we can't figure out anything.
Quite frankly, you could have a trial date scheduled and you go into court, and I had this happen to me. We were scheduled for trial, and the judge says, I'm not taking this right now. Go into the hallway and talk settlement again.
All the time.
And I hate that because now it is rushed, and you go back into court. Now it's jammed down your throat. You go back into court a couple hours later, and this particular judge was not very happy that we still didn't have an agreement, and says, get back out there. And now you're forced with an agreement that really hasn't been taken the time to be really contemplated. And we also knew, all right, if this judge takes this case, guarantee that we're not going to have a really thorough agreement.
Mhm.
And that's the other side of it. There's some great judges in my state, in Connecticut, and there's some judges that I wouldn't want them deciding what's happening with my future, my kids, my money. There's no way. So that's the other part of it, is judges are humans, and some of them have a ton of experience and some don't.
Yeah, yeah. So any last tips in terms of choosing like a great attorney?
um, do your homework. Just because someone recommends somebody to you doesn't mean that that's the right fit for you. So I would say that, well, this is an important decision. Meet with at least two different attorneys, maybe more, to understand. Like, when you sit down and you have something to compare them with, then you can say, okay, I can see how one might be different and one might be a better fit for my situation. So don't be afraid to take that time and invest in that process, of and I also say that just because a consultation is free, doesn't mean that you're going to get a lot of good information from there. So don't be
Mhm.
afraid to pay for a consultation from a lawyer, because a lot of good lawyers, they will charge for consultations, but you're getting their time. You're getting a good amount of their time. They're going to talk strategy. They're going to ask thoughtful questions, and it's not going to be like a quick fly by the night free consultation where you're not really getting information. So just be mindful of who you're going to and their reputation, and reviews online. Like, that stuff matters. Take a look at them. You'll see patterns. And make the calls and ask the good questions. Show up with questions in hand.
Yeah, yeah. Do your homework. So,
Yeah.
so Renee, how can people find you?
Yeah, so here, you can follow me from here, but my law firm's website is familylawyerct.com. We have a free divorce guide that we give out if anyone wants to go on there. It's just like, start to think about what you need to think about, and to get your ducks in a row. So anyone can go download that.
Okay, good. And you are Connecticut only or any other state?
Connecticut only. Yep.
Okay. And then quickly, this is a great question. We get it all the time. Where can we
Yeah.
find lawyers in our area who are not local that are trained and knowledgeable in this area and willing to take on these cases? So high conflict cases.
So this is a do your homework. You know, I hate to say it, but you start with Google and then start looking from there. Like read the reviews, start having those phone calls and consultations. If you don't have a referral from somebody, then you might have to just start and see who's out there. I always like you can judge by how quick you get a phone call back when you call the law firm.
Ooh, that's
Like
great.
that's right. So if you call the firm and no one answers or calls you back, then that's a pretty good sign of what you should expect in your case.
I
If
love that.
if you call and someone answers and they have customer service up front, that's probably also a good idea of what you're getting. So just start making phone calls, do the homework.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to make a little commercial about that. Thank you so much, Renee.
Yeah, of
Thanks so much
course.
for taking the time too and
Yes.
sharing all these excellent tips. I like scribbled up and filled up a whole page.
Very good. Thank you for having me and sharing your platform to do this and share all the good info.
Yes. And let's not make this the last conversation.
Yes. Sounds good.
Okay. All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.